Hey, Jack.
Hey, Trevor, how are you?
I'm doing great. Welcome back. On this episode, I want to dive into role models in leadership. I think this is one of the most important places, and this is the foundation of where we decided we need to start when talking about leadership. So, if we were to look or write a book, I think being a role model would probably be one of the first, if not the first chapter here. And I know that you've got a good little framework here for how to be a good role model. And so I want to hand over the reins to you. I'll probably be probing a little bit here as we go because I just curiously, as your co-pilot, want to learn here as well. But let's break down what's the process that you have here for being a good role model.
Well, thanks, Trevor. Yeah, when you read anything about leadership, and there's so much written about leadership, that's one of the things that's amazing. If you don't listen to this podcast, you just want to go out and read. You can read and read and read and learn. It's almost every leadership model will reflect on the fact that the leader has to be a role model, right? A role model is sort of a foundation or a core to great leadership or a good leadership. And I've always loved that part of it. It makes it real personal for the leader, right? If I say to you, you need to be a role model, it raises the standard of what you have to do. And it always reminds me of the Charles Barkley story. I think it was Charles Barkley a long time ago when he was kind of a radical in the NBA. He told some piece of media that he didn't want to be kids' role models. That was their parents' job. And he was right. But if he was a great basketball player and he was a great role model, it would have just elevated him further, in my opinion. So role model is a mantle. It's a standard at which you have to live by as a leader, whether you like it or not, right? That's the problem, right? You can't not want to be a role model if you're going to be in leadership. So that's the importance of being a role model. And then I thought I'd share today the way I think about what that means. And the way I think about role model is the first piece of it is a phrase we all have heard is walking the talk, right? In other words, there are company values and company strategic direction. There are leadership standards usually in a company that need to be followed. And the ultimate job of a leader is to walk the talk of those things, right? And it's not an easy game. From the day you are an individual contributor and become a leader, the standard got raised really high. And then it really is a journey on how well you walk the talk of the company's values, its mission, its vision, its culture, and leadership standards, the way you want to be a leader. So it's no easy feat. It's easy to say, just go walk the talk of that stuff. But what if you don't identify with a few of those things? You know, as an individual contributor, you can kind of walk away and just be respectful and not say anything. But as a leader, you need to show that you're behind those things, even if you don't deeply believe in something. And I'll give you the example of my former company, Phoenix Contact. Their purpose now is all centered around climate change and making energy available to all in the world. And if you're not into the climate change agenda, but you're a leader in that company, you need to walk the talk and support that company's agenda, or you might need to find a different company to work for. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But when Phoenix Contact embraced climate change as part of its purpose, it put a new standard out there for every leader that had already been there. It's like, you need to really embrace this. So walking the talk is a very high standard, and it's really sort of the baseline in being a role model. It's the first measurement of whether you're a good role model if you are walking the talk. And then to determine whether or not you're doing a good job of walking the talk, I like to think of the word passion, right? So I've had people tell me in my career at different times that they could see and feel my passion about something, right? at Phoenix Contact, I loved learning about the history. And even Mr. Eisert one time said to me, I see the passion in you about the company. And it's because I deeply learned about the company. I wanted to understand its history. I wanted to understand what it stood for and all the great accomplishments that it had done. And once I made that mine, once I learned all that, I could then be passionate about it. When I first arrived, it was hard to be passionate about the company because I didn't know much about it. So developing passion and the depth of commitment to the values and the mission and the vision are very, very critical. Another time I remembered in my career that I got passionate was at my Honeywell days. We sold sensors to the automotive industry. And there used to be a distributor in the car in the old days that had points and condenser, and you replaced them every 6 months, kind of like an oil change. Well, some engineer developed a little magnetic sensor that went in that distributor that got rid of the points and the condenser, and it was sort of a forever points and condenser. In other words, you never had to replace it again. And I love that story. And he did it in his garage over a weekend on his Ford Mustang. He drove it to Detroit on a Monday and showed it to some engineers in the parking lot. One of those stories. And it was just the most inspiring story, right? So I ran the automotive business for that company for a while, and I had people tell me, they said, we just love when you tell the story. And I'm like, so I'm just telling the story. You should know the story. But what they were saying is they loved when their leader told that story. When the leader was passionate about what he was leading. And that was my lesson. I didn't understand it at the time, but I reflect on it and I go, wow, that was what they were wanting as people working with me. They wanted to be inspired and they wanted to see my passion.
And I think,
for work.
I think passion on that point, now that you mention it, it is, I think, key in being the role model. And it's amazing how much passion can make up for. And I'll give you an example is when I launched Industry Sage and I had this whole ecosystem and umbrella, I went to people with this idea and this concept. And I can't count how many times I heard, that makes absolutely no sense to me, but your passion, I'm buying in. Like I'm eating whatever you're putting down on the table.
Exactly.
And I kind of reflect on that. And even in my career throughout it, there's been numerous examples of that where I reflect back on our first episode where you had mentioned our conversation in the cafeteria with you at Twitter, and I was all about LinkedIn. And we had several conversations and you got to see that passion, right? Mm-hmm. And that passion is, I think, what inspires people to kind of take that step there. And so, I just want to comment on that because I think passion is severely underestimated in many cases. But that also comes from, like you said, walking the talk. You have to.
And I think a lot of leaders shy away from it and they say, well, that's just a personality trait of that individual, right? I'm a leader and this other leader is more passionate about what they're doing. Well, I'm just more of a quiet leader. They're more of a passionate leader. And even if you're a quiet, introverted person, you can be passionate about what you're doing. You have to look for those small moments where you tell your team how passionate you are, or just display that passion even in small little pieces, and it makes up for the person that's out front, very powerful, passionate person. So, your passion for LinkedIn at the time really inspired me. It really did, and it's a great example. You were my role model in all of that, and it worked perfect. I mean, I said, wait a minute, if Trevor says we're going there, I don't understand it, but I'm going there too, and that's what I did. So that's the first sort of pillar for me, Trevor, on role model. It's about walking the talk. It's about those company and leadership values, and it's about developing a passion so that you inspire people as a role model, right? So then, if you want to offer the second pillar that I think on role model that's so important, and that is just a single word: respect. So, I'm a big believer in diversity, and I want everybody that's watching to put DEI aside and all the political nature around the three letters DEI, but come back to just the diversity core. No one can argue that diversity isn't strength, isn't good. Diversity is fantastic. It's strength. It's good. We were teaching diversity for every year that I was at Phoenix. And even in my Honeywell days, we embraced diversity. And I'm a big believer in the strength that diversity can bring. But the foundation of diversity is a single word: respect. And what it means is that you as a leader must embrace the uniqueness of others. Everybody's unique in their own way, right? I'm born in the 50s. I'm from Philadelphia. We talk fast. I was a conservative politically in general. I'm a water skier, wakeboarder. I have snowmobiles. I have my interests and my loves, right? I'm unique. You are completely different, have a whole set of uniquenesses and beliefs. The bottom line is, I need to respect you for your uniqueness, and you need to respect me for my uniqueness. And then as a leader, you immediately have to role model that. You have to say, wait a minute, everybody in my care is unique, and I must care for them equally. And I must respect each one of you for who you are. And that's a big, big journey. And you must understand them as an individual and their differences. And I'll give you one story. When I had maybe my second or third management job, I had some high-level professionals working for me that were doing marketing segmentation work. Each one had a different segment. And there were three older gentlemen and then one young MBA kind of student kid that he was all fired up, and the three older gentlemen were more settled down, right? So we would have little staff meetings and we'd talk. So anyway, I thought everything was going great. There was a little survey on my leadership, and I get this feedback. It says, Jack is playing favorites. And I went, what? I'm playing favorites. So I went to them all individually and said, gee whiz, do you know where this came from? It's anonymous, but it's only 4 of you. And the one gentleman looked me in the eye and said, yeah, it's from me. I'm the one who said it. I said, well, what am I doing? He said, well, you're always letting Paul talk. And Paul just happened to be the young up-and-coming leader guy who wanted to talk a lot. So I would just say, we'd have a topic, and I'd say, who wants to say, any got any feedback? And Paul would always jump in. He'd always jump in. And I said, well, that's because he just always speaks up. And he goes, well, you've never asked me if I had an opinion. So he was a formal gentleman from prior generations before me, and they didn't talk until they were called on.
Interesting.
And I didn't understand that. I was like, okay. Yeah. So that's all it was. And as soon as I started asking his opinion before the other gentleman could talk, then he got to give his opinion, and he had great opinions and great ideas. But that was a big learning for me. That was his uniqueness, and I had to adapt my leadership style to my team's uniquenesses so that I could be a good role model. The other thing about respect is another story that just blows me away to this day. As you know me, Trevor, I walk around the building and say hi to people, and I do my best to try to know their name.
Yeah, you have incredible memory at that. I came from HR, taking pride in knowing 90% of the employees in that building from one interaction or another.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away just how many names you remembered.
Well,
so you're not lying when you say that.
Well, and I'm not trying to bring attention to me, but I'm trying to say is it's just something that's born in me about respect. I mean, if I meet you, I should try to know your name. And if I forget, there's one little golden rule. A little later on, I'm walking by and I say good morning, and I go, I forgot your name. Can you remind me? And then you say, Jack, it's Trevor. How are you doing? Well, so anyway, that's just who I am. I try my best to learn people's names. Of course, I don't know everybody's name in the company. Well, I had countless number of high-level VPs and or presidents of companies visit because my team would then always have me be part of the customer experience if there was a high-level exec. So I would be part of it, and I went even if there wasn't a high-level exec. But whenever there was a high-level exec there, they always wanted to make sure I was there. And then there was always a tour on the agenda. We got to go for a tour. And then I would always say, well, why don't I give the tour? And so we'd go.
I remember it. Yeah.
So we'd go for a walk. I'm with this other leader, and we're doing our thing. And this happened probably 5 to 10 times in my 20 years. That this one gentleman, vividly, I remember the one day, we get to the end of the tour and we're walking sort of up the ramp toward the conference room. And the gentleman tapped me on the arm and stopped me and said, do you know everybody's name here? Because we went out in the warehouse and I know Curtis or I know Deb or I know, Annette Wolf, I know and I just say hi to them, right? And same in the factory. I say hi to the people I know. And I say hi to everybody, but I can say their names half the time. And so he said, do you know everybody's name here? And I said, honestly, no. I said, I probably know a couple hundred, but I don't know them all because it's hard. After 400 or 500, it's hard to keep track of everybody. And he looked at me and he said, that's fascinating to me. And Trevor, this word bubble popped up on top of my head, that I was thinking. And all I could think of at that moment was, it was fascinating to me that it was fascinating to him that I knew people's names. It's like it was this big thing to him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're a high-level leader.
And for you, it's probably common sense.
Well, why wouldn't you know people's names? And my point is, this goes back to respect. If you know somebody's name and say hello to them and address them by name, they get this feeling, and it should be true, that you respect them.
Yeah. Because
you took the effort to know their name. So, and that story happened more than once where I got the same reaction. Do you know everybody's name here? And I'm going, word bubble. You know that word bubble. But that's one of my, and every time it would happen, it would just keep reinforcing to me how important it was to respect every individual in the company, right? So I could tell story after story. Probably another great one was when I tried to coach a young supervisor. We went on a tour with a high-level German leader that had come to the company. He was one of the big bosses. And we were walking through the factory, and we get to this one spot, and there was a worker there doing an operation, and the supervisor was saying what it was, and the German leader said, well, I don't understand it. Can you show me? And so he had to reach over and get a part and bring it to explain what was going on. And as he reached around the operator, he didn't acknowledge the person. He just stuck his hand in front, grabbed the part, came back, told the story, put it back. So when the tour was over and I went and found him later, I explained to him that he's a great young leader. He's going to grow. He's a supervisor. He was going to go places. Everything was great. But I wanted to give him advice and coach him that when you get close to one of your workers, and if you're interrupting them or not, you might want to say, hey, good morning, Betty. I made that up. Good morning, Betty. Excuse me, may I get a part to show? And you address them as an individual doing meaningful work, right? So, of course, he was nervous. He had to get out of jail free card, right? I mean, he was nervous with the big leader there and all that. So I told him everything was fine. But that little story, about knowing people's names was then told in a different environment. And then lastly, on respect, this story because I've told you in a funny, self-serving way. I'll be totally admitting. When I do a post on LinkedIn, you and I know I look at impressions. So how did I do? I like
you
I
love your impressions. You love them.
I just want to know I did good. It's not that I want to be the winner. It's just if I put something out there and it gets 22 impressions, I say, well, that was a waste of people's time. So as you know, one of my 2 best posts ever, one was in 2021 when I went into the warehouse and learned how to pick and pack on the machinery, and I was packing on second shift our boxes for our customers and distributors because we were swamped, everybody was working tons of overtime, and I just wanted to help out. And I put that out there with a little picture of me holding the box that I had packed. And that got over 40,000 views, and all the comments that came in, everybody thought that was the most amazing leadership.
Yeah.
When I did it, I didn't think it was amazing leadership. I thought I was helping my warehouse team that needed some help.
Yeah.
But what what I did take from it that I think the community was exhibiting is when you're displaying the care of your workers, right? When you're trying to help your team, roll up your sleeves and get in there and help your team. It's sort of an ultimate respect and telling them that they do meaningful work and you just want to be there to help. People expressing the positive of caring for their teammates just hit me. And I think it was a great story about respect for me too, because we all respect the great hero workers that got us through that crisis, and they were doing an amazing job. So.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people, I gotta cut in and share this story.
Sure.
I don't know if you remember this or not, but this always stood out to me just for the absurdity of it, but also the meaning behind it here as well. I remember when I had my office on the first floor with you, and I remember it was probably like 4:55. I just, wanted pack up, head home for the evening, decompress, do whatever. And here comes you barging in. Hey, Trevor, I have a great idea. And when you lead with that, I know I'm going to be there for a little bit longer.
Oh, I'm so egotistical at that moment. I apologize.
And you had mentioned that the warehouse at the time was experiencing high demand, and you were empathetic of the hours that they were working, the workload, and you're like, we got to get them more help. And we were actively trying to recruit more. And at that point in time, we were implementing this like part-time, on-demand worker kind of thing. But you kind of marched in and you said, hey, I have this idea. Let's build the Uber app for part-time employees.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I didn't even know where to begin. But it does show that these images and these posts just aren't for publicity, which I think a lot of people think about. Behind the scenes, there is a genuine care. And that to me, I already had known that you cared and were empathetic and wanted to help. But that to me just really showed that you could have easily just, stepped back and said, well, we're posting the job and we're trying to get to help. But you were actively seeking out solutions.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be here today if I would have built that next to Uber app.
Yeah, might not have. Yeah,
we won't be here.
Yeah, that was for the listeners. It was the idea that the warehouse manager could post when he had an immediate opening, and then a part-time community of workers that wasn't working, but they were all signed up. They could, just like an Uber driver, grab the shift, and then come running into work, right? Kind of like an Uber driver. So yeah, we never did it. We did create though permanent part-time folks, people that signed up, and Troy, the warehouse manager, was able to reach out to a group text story, and he almost did the Uber app because he would group text, hey, I have a job opening in 2 days. Someone has to go on vacation. And people would call him back. It was the first person to call him back. It worked pretty good. Yeah.
And the last thing I have to say as well with going back to the LinkedIn impressions, I know you love your impressions. And when you gave me a call to check up and see how the family was doing, the first thing that you said to me was, look, Trevor, I know you don't care about impressions, but did you see my latest post?
Well, and for everybody too, it was the post about me retiring.
Retirement post.
And then my joke to you, and we need to make sure everybody knows that, is that has become, of course, my greatest post that I did in my 5 or 10 years. And my joke or serious moment there is, I guess people were dying to get me to leave because once I announced that I'm leaving, they really like that.
They like that.
So there's a third element that we haven't touched on yet. Yeah. So let's
talk about that.
Yeah, the last, we'll just call it the last element of role model to me, the most important part of role model, is really making sure you display as a leader the highest levels of ethics and integrity. And, at first when you hear that, usually it's something like that's written in their foundation statement. Our company does the highest levels of ethics and integrity. Yeah. And everybody says, well, that's easy, just don't tell a lie, which is true. You should never tell a lie. But when you get to ethics and integrity and you talk about the highest level, it puts a standard on that is somewhat difficult to reach. I mean, it's because you get hit with so many situations and so many problems, and it's easy to make a mistake if you have conflicting objectives with another leader, or pressures to meet a deadline. And I really think people underestimate this and just sort of say, well, I'm a really good person, I don't have to worry about that. So I spend time on it when we do leadership training. And let me break it into the two pieces. So the way I think about the highest level of ethics, right, is the first measure of a decision, an ethical decision that you would make that day, would be if whatever you did, whatever decision you made or whatever action you took, if you could go home that night, call up your mother and tell her you did it, if your mom would be proud of you, you're good to go. But if you couldn't tell your mother what you did that day,
not so good.
I don't think that's not a really good decision. The second measure of highest level of ethics and integrity to me, and now it will be social media, is that if you post what you did that day on LinkedIn, the decision you made, that jump ball decision you made, you post it on social media and you're ready to take the heat, then you made a highly ethical decision. Yeah, I used to tell the story about putting a headline in your local newspaper, which that doesn't exist anymore. So
I remember that actually. Yeah, I remember you mentioned that at some point in time.
But now it's about, social media.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last one is really if we shift gears to integrity. And integrity is simple, but the best way I like to think about integrity is it's keeping all the little promises. That's the way I learned it one day. There's another one that says doing the right thing when nobody's looking.
Yeah. And
that's important too. But really, really, really embracing ethics and integrity. And I think it's one of those things that you, like I said, when a new leader has to live up to that standard, they think, I got this. Don't worry about it. But it's only 2 or 3 moments in a year that will be challenged. And the bad news is if you make the wrong decision or if you take the easy way out and you take the lower level of ethics and integrity, your team will see that glaringly. It will jump out at them, and then they'll worry about you. They'll wonder what's inside.
Yeah.
So I think every leader that needs, and every leader needs to be, but every leader, as they pursue their role model journey, needs to make sure they keep that highest level of ethics and integrity as their gold standard of their behavior and their individual decisions day in and day out. So that's kind of the 3 ways I look at role model, Trev. This is walking the talk thing, it's respect, and it's ethics and integrity.
No, it's a tremendous breakdown, and I think that's really helpful having those pillars, because I think, like we said, everyone says walk the talk. I have a selfish question here.
Sure.
One of the things that when I was in a leadership role, especially when I was new in it, I always fought this battle between wanting to be liked and wanting to be a role model. So what advice would you give to somebody, let's just say it's myself as a new leader, what advice would you give? I personally, how I kind of approached it was just to try to do the right thing and be friendly and not give people a reason to not like me.
Yeah.
But I see it time and time again. There's always that inner kind of feel like you know what to do as a leader, but you feel like you have to get people to like you first because maybe it's a lack of self-confidence in your leadership skills that being liked can make up for those. Yeah. So how would you, or what advice would you give to somebody who might be going through that right now themselves?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would do is try to get that thought out of your head, meaning being liked is a goal. I would say being liked could be an outcome of good leadership, but you don't want to approach leadership with the goal of being liked. You got to turn it around 180 degrees.
Say that again. That makes a great quote there.
So make it an outcome.
Make being liked an outcome of good leadership.
Not being liked and trying to develop your leadership from being liked, right? A goal of good leadership is not to be liked. It's an outcome of good leadership.
And we're going to sell that bumper sticker on our
Yeah.
website.
So, yeah, if you can clean that up, we'll make it look good. But and maybe a good story to reinforce that thought that you're questioning me on. One of the toughest days I had to face at Phoenix was when we had the '09 crash and sales tanked, and all around the whole country, all the sales were terrible, and everybody was doing these hard actions with their employees. So instead of laying anybody off, we chose to take a 5% pay cut. And I announced that in my all-employee meetings that we held quarterly, face-to-face, in front of everybody. All the employees, I think were about 400 or 500 at the time, did 3 different meetings, about 125 people in a meeting, 150 people in a meeting. And that was not going to get me liked.
No.
Believe me. But I'll never forget, one of the factory workers came walking up to me at the end of the meeting, and I was waiting to get an earful, a mouthful, and an earful. And he just looked at me square in the eye and said, "Okay, Jack, I get it." He said, "Your pay getting cut too?" And I said, "Yes, sir. We're all in this together." And he said, "Okay." And he walked away.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
So I delivered the hardest news they had heard in years. Wasn't going to make anybody happy, but I did the right leadership thing. And I'm guessing that's why people were respecting me in leadership, right? Because I faced the hard news, and I didn't worry about being liked. I worried about doing the right thing for the company and the people. So
yeah, that's
because we looked at it as that's how we save jobs, right? And that's how I told them. I said, look, by all of us doing this, we're going to save 25 to 50 jobs that we might have to lay off, and we weren't going to do that. And it was a choice, right? It was a choice. So anyway, yeah, being liked is a problem, right? Everybody wants to be liked, right?
Yeah.
When I grew up, I don't know what year it was, 8th or 9th grade. I remember one time, the cliques all happen in junior high and high school, and you see them forming.
Yeah.
And
I remember that.
I just was like, oh my gosh. And it was some moment that happened about me wanting to be in a clique, and I wasn't in the clique. And it just hit me that, you know what? I'm not going to ever worry about what people think about me. I'm going to just worry about myself being a good person.
Yeah.
And that has been part of my leadership journey too, that you got to not worry about what people think about you. You just got to be a role model, walk the talk of those values of the company, great leadership values, and care about people, be passionate about what you do, and just keep going.
Yeah.
And then there's always going to be people that don't think you're good. That's
the nature
life.
Of the beast. Yeah.
That's life, and you have to accept that. You put yourself out there, you're going to get 10 or 20% of the people that just don't like you, and their opinions are valid. There's no problem, but it's you just have to take on that courage and go do it. But you got to wake up every day knowing that you're doing the right thing, as long as you stick to the mission and stick to the values, good values of leadership. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great spot to end on.
Okay.
We could talk for hours about this, and the good thing is we'll be back next week for another episode. Any idea? We got a lot we could talk about next week, Jack. Any preference? We've got positivity is a huge one in leadership.
Yeah, why don't we do that one next?
We'll do
positivity would be great.
Yeah,
yeah.
Perfect.
We got a whole list of things we could tackle, but I think that's a good one to follow up role model.
Yeah, and if anyone has any challenges, questions, topics they want us to cover, just shoot myself a message on LinkedIn, or even send Jack a message on LinkedIn, and eventually we'll get an email address that you can mail in questions for. But otherwise, great chatting here today, Jack, and we'll be back again next week.
Thanks, Trev.
All right, take care, everybody.